Okay, let's get started again. I see Commissioner McBride and I see Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Tuttle, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Thank you. Okay, we are back in public session at 2:50 p.m. Thank you. Sorry that took a little bit longer than I expected. We have a lot more to cover. Before we get started, can I ask Matt, this is going to, in all likelihood, go beyond 4 p.m. Is there any problem with that from a technology standpoint?
No, there should not be any problem with that.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. So let's get started. We left off on final licenses with two final licenses to discuss and vote on. Nature's Medicine Incorporated, MR 281701 retail, and Nature's Medicine MR 281709 also retail. I would like to state for the record that we approved in executive session these two licenses with an additional condition, which I will not make public due to the second protective order. Thank you. Can we move on now to provisional licenses? Thank you, Matt. Mr. Potvin, are you around? There you are.
Yes, I am here, Mr. Chairman.
I gave you a long break to catch your breath, so we're gonna go through this. Okay, we got. There seems to be some dispute whether we have 40, 41, or 42, but there's a large number of them, and we'll go through them. So if we get started, please. First is Aspen Blue Cultures Incorporated, RMDA 3032, Vertically Integrated Medical Marijuana Treatment Center. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Aspen Blue Cultures Incorporated. They're seeking a medical marijuana treatment center for their vertical integration located in Attleboro. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review and consideration. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any additional requests for additional conditions on this license, but are there any before I ask for a motion? Then Commissioner Flanagan, could I please ask for a motion to approve staff recommendation on this provisional license?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, would you second that, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Tuttle?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show the Commission unanimously approves staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Aspen Blue Cultures Incorporated. Mr. Potvin, it's okay with you. I'm going to ask for just one vote on the next three, even if they're not co-located. I think that just will help us get through this. So the next three are One Connection Corp, MCM 282245, Tier 3 Indoor Cultivation, One Connection Corp, MPN 281717, Product Manufacturer, One Connection Corp, MRN 282401, Retail. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is One Connection Corp. They are located in Dighton. They are seeking three licenses that you just stated, all for that Dighton location. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review and consideration. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of three provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any additional conditions being requested. Are there others? Then could I ask Commissioner McBride, could you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation, issue three provisional licenses to One Connection Corp?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I ask Commissioner Tuttle, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Tuttle. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Tuttle?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the issuance of three provisional licenses to One Connection Corp. Next up are Four Bros Incorporated, MCN 281814, Tier 3 Indoor Cultivation, MPN 281543, Product Manufacturer, and MRN 281550. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Four Bros Incorporated, proposing to do business as East Coast Farms. They are located in Holyoke. They are seeking three licenses for that Holyoke location. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of three provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much. I have a request for additional conditions on these three licenses from both Commissioners McBride and Flanagan. Commissioner McBride, the conditions she requests is prior to final licensure, applicant shall update the security plans for all license applications to reflect correct references to the medical use regulations at 935 CMR 501.000. Commissioner Flanagan has three conditions requested. One is clarification on training and internship program. Is there a defined curriculum? How many courses / training sessions per year? What topics will be addressed during program? Second is clarification about social equity responsibility. Will the resources, training, and guidance be for people seeking jobs or those trying to start a business? And third, clarification on community cleanup. Who is the community partner for this initiative? Are there any other conditions requested by the commissioners on these three licenses? Then could I ask Commissioner Tittle, would you please make a motion to approve staff recommendation, issue 3 provisional licenses to 4 bros subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners McBride and Flanagan?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Tittle made the motion, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Tittle.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show that the commission unanimously approved staff recommendation to issue 3 provisional licenses to 4 Bros Inc., subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners McBride and Flanagan. Next up are 3 licenses from Agricultural Healing Incorporated, MCN 282370, Tier 11 Indoor Cultivation, MPN 281769, Product Manufacturer, MRN 283027, Retail. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Agricultural Healing Incorporated. They're proposing, they were applying for 3 licenses located at the same location in Fall River. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of 3 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any requests for additional conditions on these licenses. Are there any? Then could I ask Commissioner McBride, would you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue 3 provisional licenses to Agricultural Healing Incorporated?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Carter, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Tittle. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Tittle.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved issuing 3 provisional licenses to Agricultural Healing Incorporated. Next up are 2 applications from American Brands Inc., MCN 282714, Tier 9 Indoor Cultivation, and MPN 281531, Product Manufacturer. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is American Brands Incorporated. They are seeking 2 licenses located in Freetown. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of 2 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of commissioners requesting additional conditions on these licenses. Are there any? Okay, then could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, please, to make a motion to
So moved.
approve the staff recommendation to American? Thank you. Could I have a second, please, Commissioner McBride?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Tittle.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue 2 provisional licenses to American Brands Inc. Next up, and Mr. Potvin, is this ATAZ or A to Z Laboratories?
I've been calling it ATAZ.
Okay, ATAZ Laboratories Inc., ILN 281335, Independent Testing Laboratory. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is ATAZ Laboratory Incorporated. They're proposing to do business in Hopkinton. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you. I am aware of additional conditions requested by Commissioners McBride and Flanagan. Commissioner McBride The condition is the applicant shall correct the transportation plan to accurately reflect the requirements of 935 CMR 500.10513D storage requirements. And from Commissioner Flanagan, her request for additional condition is clarification on how a donation to Cultivated will directly impact residents of Fitchburg. Are there other conditions that commissioners would wish to attach to this application? And Commissioner Title, could I ask for a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Atos Laboratories Incorporated?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Title made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show the commission unanimously approved the provisional license for Atos Laboratories Incorporated, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners McBride and Flanagan. Next up, we have BB Botanics LLC, MCN 282817, Tier 1 Indoor Cultivation, and MRN 282084 Retail. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is BB Botanics LLC. They're proposing to acquire 2 provisional licenses located in Essex. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of 2 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have a request from Commissioner Flanagan to add the condition on both licenses, resubmit plan to include more than hiring. Are there other conditions that are requested? Then could I please ask for a motion to approve staff recommendation to issue 2 provisional licenses to BB Botanics LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Title, would you make such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Commissioner McBride, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let's record show Commissioner Title made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show that the commission unanimously agreed to issue 2 provisional licenses to BB Botanics LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan. Next up is 1 license for Be Well Holdings Incorporated, MPN 281725, product manufacturer. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Be Well Holdings Incorporated, proposing to acquire a product manufacturing license in Provincetown. This applicant was an expedited applicant due to the fact that it's a woman-owned business. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much. I have a request from Commissioner Flanagan to add an additional condition to this license application, which is resubmit plan to include more than hiring. Are there other conditions requested? Then can I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Be Well Holdings, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Be Well Holdings Incorporated, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan. Next up, 1 license application for Cannabis LLC, MRN 283743 Retail. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Cannabis LLC, proposing to do business in Southbridge. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much. I have a request from Commissioner Title to add an additional condition to this application, specifically revised diversity plan goal to recruit 10% minorities, 10% women, and 10% veterans for its hiring initiatives to be objectively reasonable. Are there other conditions requested on this application? Then could I ask Commissioner McBride, would you make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Cannabis LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Title?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Title, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Cannabis LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Title. Next up, Caroline's Cannabis, MRN 283694 Retail. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Caroline's Cannabis LLC. They're proposing to do business in Hopedale. This application did receive expedited review as the owner is a social equity participant. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you. I am not aware of any conditions being requested on this application. Are there any? Then Commissioner Todd, could I ask you please to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Caroline's Cannabis?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Title made the motion, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Caroline's Cannabis. Thank you. Mr. Potvin, next up, CCC Mashpee Holdings LLC, 2 licenses, MCN 282720, Tier 2 Indoor Cultivation, and MPN 281883, Product Manufacturer. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is CCC Mashpee Holdings LLC. They're proposing to do business in Mashpee. They are seeking 2 licenses. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of 2 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am aware of an additional condition requested by Commissioner McBride, specifically for both licenses. Applicant shall, prior to final licensure, amend section 3.7 of its security plan to address the discrepancy in the section's final sentence. Are there any other conditions requested on these 2 applications? Then could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue 2 provisional licenses to CCC Mashpee Holdings LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner McBride?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue 2 provisional licenses to CCC Mashpee Holdings LLC, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner McBride. Next up, Mr. Potvin, is Community Care Collective, Incorporated, MRN 283742.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Community Care Collective Incorporated. They're proposing to do business in Littleton. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you. I am aware of an additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan on this license application, which is to resubmit plan to include more than hiring. Are there any other conditions requested? Then could I ask, please, for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Community Care Collective Incorporated, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner McBride, would you make such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Title, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Community Care Collective, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan. Next up, Mr. Potvin, we have 2 applications from Community Gardens LLC, MCN 282848, which is Tier 5 Indoor Cultivation, and MPN 281889, Product Manufacturer. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Community Gardens LLC. They're proposing to do business in Mansfield. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of 2 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Commissioner McBride has requested a condition to apply to both licenses. Applicant shall, prior to final licensure, make any specific request for alternative security provisions in the form of a waiver request, which shall be subject to the provisions of 935 CMR 500.1102. Are there other conditions requested on these two applications? Commissioner Tyler, would you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue two provisional licenses to Community Gardens LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner McBride?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Title made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue two provisional licenses to Community Gardens LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner McBride. Next up, Mr. Potvin, is Cosmopolitan Dispensary Incorporated, MRN 282961 Retail.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Cosmopolitan Dispensary Incorporated. They're proposing to do business in Fall River. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any requests for additional conditions on this license. Are there any conditions requested? And Commissioner McBride, could I ask you for a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Cosmopolitan Dispensary Incorporated?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Tyler, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Cosmopolitan Dispensary Incorporated. Next up, is this DBA EMJ LLC, or is it doing business as EMJ?
I've been going as DBA EMJ.
Okay, thank you. So next up is DBA EMJ LLC, which is an application for Tier 1 cultivation, MCN 282135. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is DBA EMJ LLC. They're proposing to do business in Cummington. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I'm not aware of any additional conditions being requested on this application. Are there any? Could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional licenses to DBA EMJ LLC, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue two provisional licenses to issue one provisional license to DBA EMJ LLC. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Emerald City Growers Incorporated, MCN 281618, which is Tier 2 indoor cultivation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Emerald City Growers Incorporated. They're proposing to do business in Clinton. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have requests for additional conditions from both Commissioners Flanagan and Title. Commissioner Flanagan has three conditions. Resubmit plan to include more than hiring, specify which cohort you are seeking to impact, and finally, clarification on how a donation to MRCC will directly impact the specified cohort. For Commissioner Title, her requested condition is to revise diversity plan goal to give hiring preference to women 5% and minorities 5% to be objectively reasonable. Are there any other conditions requested on this application? Then please could I ask for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Emerald City Growers Incorporated, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Title and Flanagan. Commissioner Title, would you make such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Title made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Emerald City Growers Incorporated, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Title and Flanagan. Next up is High Five Incorporated, MPN 281787, product manufacturer. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is High Five Incorporated. They're proposing to do business in East Hampton. Additional information is contained within the executive summary. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Title has requested two conditions on this application. First, revised diversity plan goal to recruit 20% or more of women and/or veterans in retail and management positions to be objectively reasonable. And then second, clarify what is meant by retail and management positions for cultivation application. Are there any other requests for conditions on this license? Then could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to High Five Incorporated subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Title?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let's make sure Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to High Five Incorporated, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Title. Next up is Metro Harvest Incorporated, MRN 283470, retail. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Metro Harvest Incorporated. They're proposing to do business in Fairhaven. Additional information is contained within the executive summary. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you. I am aware of a additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan, which is to resubmit plan to include more than hiring. Are there other conditions requested on this license? Then Commissioner McBride, would you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Metro Harvest Incorporated, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Title, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let's record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Title. Your vote, Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Metro Harvest Incorporated, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan. Next up, MMM Transport Incorporated, MTN 281556, which is a third-party transporter. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is MMM Transport Incorporated. They're proposing to do business located in Northampton. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Additionally, this application did receive expedited review as it is a woman-owned and minority-owned business. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much. I'm not aware of any conditions being requested on the additional conditions being requested on this license. Are there any? Then Commissioner Child, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation issue a provisional license to MMM Transport Incorporated?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Title made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to MMM Transport Incorporated. Thank you. Next up is Nature's Alternative Incorporated, MRN 283325, retail. Mr. Potvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Nature's Alternative Incorporated. They're proposing to do business in Wellfleet. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I'm not aware of any additional conditions requested on this license. Are there any? Then Commissioner McBride, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Nature's Alternative Incorporated?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Title, would you second that motion? Commissioner Title?
Second.
Thank you. I'll let the record. Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Nature's Alternatives Incorporated. Next up is Northeast Alternatives Incorporated, MCN 282112. I would like to, for the record, read a motion that was approved in executive session on this license. Two parts. Move that the commission deem the application of Northeast Alternatives incomplete based on the information before us presented by the Associate Enforcement Counsel, which constitutes a material change. The material change being new evidence found through staff's review of investigative reports entered into evidence in the matter of U.S. versus Correa and another, which raises the likelihood of a suitability issue and the need for further investigation and could constitute the basis for a denial of the application, and move further that the application be remanded to investigation staff for continued assessment of suitability, and that the application be returned to the commission at such time as a full assessment by commission staff of suitability of the applicant is concluded and the application is deemed complete. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, is Retail Amherst LLC, MRN 282975, Retail. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is RC Retail Amherst LLC. They're proposing to do business in Amherst. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I'm not aware of any conditions being requested on this license at this time. Are there any? Then, Commissioner Tittle, could I ask please for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to RC Retail Amherst LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, could I ask you to second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Tittle made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Tittle?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to RC Retail Amherst LLC. Next up is Regenerative LLC, MCN 282958, Tier 10 Outdoor Cultivation. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Regenerative LLC, proposing to do business in Uxbridge. They did receive expedited review due to the fact that they are seeking an outdoor cultivation license. Additional information is contained within the executive summary. Therefore, staff recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any additional conditions being requested on this license. Are there any? Then could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Regenerative LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Tittle?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Regenerative LLC. Next up, Mr. Potvin, there are two applications from Sparkboro Corp., MCN 282681, Tier 2 Indoor Cultivation, and MPN 281852, Product Manufacturer. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Sparkboro Corporation. They're proposing to do business in Egremont. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff recommend the issuance of two provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I'm aware of requests for additional conditions from both Commissioners Flanagan and Tittle. From Commissioner Flanagan, first, resubmit plan to include more than hiring. Second, specify which cohort you are seeking to impact. Third, clarification on how a donation to New England Veterans Alliance will have a direct impact on specified cohort. For Commissioner Tittle, the requested condition is revised diversity plan goal to give hiring preference to women 5% and minorities 5% to be objectively reasonable. Are there other conditions requested on this application or these two applications? Then could I ask Commissioner Tittle, would you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue two provisional licenses to Sparkboro Corp. Subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan and Tittle?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Tittle made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Tittle?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue 2 provisional licenses to Sparkboro Corp., subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan and Title. Next up, Mr. Potvin, we have Spencer House LLC, MPN 281886, product manufacturer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Spencer House LLC. They are proposing to do business in Chester. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review. This application did receive expedited review as they are a woman-owned business. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much. I have a request from Commissioner Flanagan to add an additional condition, which is to resubmit plan to include more than hiring. Are there any other conditions requested on this license application? Then could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Spencer House LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman? Let the record show the commission unanimously approve the issuance of a provisional license to Spencer House LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan. Okay, Mr. Poppin, next up, Green Harbor Dispensary LLC, the Green Harbor Dispensary LLC, MCN 281264, which is Tier 2 indoor cultivation, and MRN 283220 retail. Mr. Potvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is the Green Harbor Dispensary LLC. They're proposing to do cultivation operations in Middleborough and retail operations in Abington. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of 2 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Okay, thank you very much. I am aware of an additional condition requested by Commissioner Title on both of these licenses, and specifically revised diversity plan goal to compromise a workforce of no less than 20% of its employees being women and other identified groups to be objectively reasonable. Are there other conditions requested on these 2 licenses? Okay, then could I ask Commissioner McBride, would you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue 2 provisional licenses to the Green Harbor Dispensary LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Title?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Title, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue 2 provisional licenses to the Green Harbor Dispensary LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Title. Next up, Tree Market Lynn LLC, MRN 282587 retail. Mr. Potvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Tree Market Lynn LLC. They're proposing to do business in Lynn. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much. I am not aware of any additional conditions being requested on this license. Are there any? And could I ask Commissioner Title, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Tree Market Lynn LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let's make sure that Commissioner Title made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Tree Market Lynn LLC. Next up, Mr. Potvin, are 2 applications from Twisted Growers LLC. First, MCN 281714, which is Tier 11 indoor cultivation, and the second being MPN 281909, product manufacturer. Mr. Potvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Twisted Growers LLC. They're proposing to do business in Lakeville. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of 2 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have a request from Commissioner Flanagan for an additional condition on these 2 license applications, specifically resubmit plan to include more than hiring. Are there any other conditions requested on this license or these 2 licenses? Then could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, could you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue 2 provisional licenses to Twisted Growers LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved issuing 2 provisional licenses to Twisted Growers LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan. The next one is We Can Deliver Boston LLC, DOA 100109, delivery only. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is We Can Deliver Boston LLC. They are proposing to do business in Athol. This application did receive expedited review as 70% of ownership is held by a social equity participant. Additional information is contained in the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have a request from Commissioner McBride for an additional condition. Prior to final licensure, the applicant shall submit an amended delivery plan that includes additional information about how the applicant plans to operationalize deliveries, such as the plan if they can't find parking, the plan for notifying the customer of arrival, and other details specific to the time period immediately preceding and up to the culmination of the transaction with the consumer. Are there other conditions requested on this application? Then could I ask Commissioner McBride, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to We Can Deliver Boston LLC, subject to additional condition requested by Commissioner McBride?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Title, can I ask for a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to We Can Deliver Boston LLC, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner McBride. How are we doing, Mr. Potvin? Is that it for provisional licenses at this time?
It is, Mr. Chairman.
Did you count? Was it 40, 41, or 42?
It was 41 adult use licenses and 1 medical
Oh,
license.
so I was right. So 42 total provisional licenses. Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. As always, my appreciation to you and the entire licensing staff for your extraordinary hard work and incredibly high level of productivity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our new Director of Investigations, Nob Kamalo, and her team for all their hard work, especially seeing as this was the largest number of final licenses proposed at a single meeting. So thank you to her and her team as well.
Once again, Mr. Potvin, you and the rest of your team keep raising the bar, so be careful here. The bar never goes down; it only goes up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. Appreciate it. The next agenda item, Mr. Giancola, is responsible vendor training. Mr. Executive Director, who's going to lead this part of the discussion?
I am happy to lead this discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Please go ahead then. Thank you.
So you have before you 3 proposed vendors to be certified as responsible vendor trainers. There were a total, just for context, there are currently a total of 8 applications before the commission. These 3 are being proposed for your consideration. The remaining 5 will be reopened for additional information. As you'll recall, this is a process that we as an entire staff undertake a cohesive and comprehensive review amongst different departments, and they are considered in batches as opposed to one by one. So this round of review has yielded 3 before you. The first is ACTA or ACTA LLC. They're proposing, the recommendation before you is that we recommend it for a 2-year certification. They've also submitted a waiver for that online portion. That'll be considered should the commission approve them as RVT trainers. So the first one is ACTA LLC.
Shall we do this as a roster, Mr. Executive Director, or individual? What's your recommendation?
I would defer to the commission. Certainly the most expeditious way is as a roster.
So let's keep going then. Let's do it as a roster. Please go forward with the next 2 then.
Okay, so the next entity is Tessie Consulting out of Milton, Mass. And again, they were reviewed by a cohort of staff and are recommended for to be certified as a RVT trainer for a 2-year certification. This entity, as of today at least, has not submitted a waiver request, but certainly would be eligible if they were to submit that. The last and final entity is Sinsamilla Seminars out of Cotuit, Mass. Again, being recommended for a 2-year certification for RVT training, and also has not yet, at least yet, submitted a waiver request for that online portion. So, but again, if approved, they would be eligible to do that and certainly considered in the normal course.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Executive Director. Before I ask for a motion to approve this roster, are there questions or comments for the Executive Director? Then could I ask please for a motion to approve this roster of responsible vendor training? Could I get that motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Flanagan. Could I get a second, please?
Second.
I thought that Commissioner McBride, I think, was a second. So let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the recommendation of staff to approve these responsible vendor training firms. Thank you very much. That's it for this responsible vendor training at this point in time, Mr. Executive Director.
That is correct.
Thank you. Okay, Matt, let's move on. I'm going to ask for the forbearance of both the commissioners, the staff, as well as everybody listening in. Going through those provisional licenses, actually, it does wear me out a little bit. I would really appreciate if we could take a 5-minute break and then get into Dr. Johnson's presentation. So I've got 3:36 on my computer. If we could reconvene in 5 minutes at 3:41, I'd really appreciate the break. So we are in recess for 5 minutes till 3:41. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the forbearance of everybody. I appreciate the break. The next agenda item is a report from our Director of Research, Dr. Johnson, and Samantha Dunan on a baseline review and assessment of adult and emerging cannabis use. This is something I've been really looking forward to. And as soon as I heard this report was ready for prime time, Dr. Johnson, I was very excited to hear it. So please go ahead, and thank you so much for your hard work and for that of Samantha Dunan as well. Thank you. Julie, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. So thank you, Director Collins, Chairman Hoffman, and Commissioners Flanagan, McBride, and Title for your time and attention this afternoon. I know it's been a long day. Today, we are excited to present our 9th report, a baseline review and assessment of adult and emerging adult cannabis use, high-level findings from the International Cannabis Policy Study 2018 to 2019, and literature overview. Next slide, please, Matt. This report directly meets another required research agenda item, which is to assess patterns of use, methods of consumption, sources of purchase, and general perceptions for 2 cohorts statutorily identified of interest, including among adults and college and university students, also referred to here as emerging adults. It is important to note that emerging adults in this study only refer to those aged 16 to 20, while adult use remains legal, and the study does not discern out college enrollment. Before we begin, we would like to express our gratitude to the International Cannabis Policy Study, or ICPS, team, including Principal Investigator Dr. Hammond from the University of Waterloo in Canada, who leads this important work. For some background, the ICPS study consists of yearly repeated surveys designed to examine the impact of cannabis policy on public health across multiple domains. The project started in 2018 and surveys people aged 16 to 65 years old in both Canadian provinces and select U.S. states with varying cannabis legalization laws. Data in today's presentation includes results from Wave 1 in 2018 and Wave 2 in 2019 among Massachusetts participants only. 1,143 Massachusetts respondents were included in Wave 1 and 2,476 respondents were included in Wave 2. The study uses post-stratification survey weights created using age by sex by state, education, and age by smoking status groups for weighted estimates of Massachusetts residents. Next slide, please. In brief, the ICPS team provided data and ran a series of statistical tests to test for differences in Massachusetts results from 2018 to 2019. Like all studies, findings are subject to limitations, including social desirability bias and bias inherent in longitudinal survey designs. However, the ICPS adds critical metrics to repeated surveying, including, but not limited to, its comprehensive approach to understanding specific cannabis patterns, trends, and perceptions across a range of cohorts and market indicators, including the illicit market. For purposes of this report, only high-level findings from Waves 1 and 2 are included. This report does not intend to provide a comprehensive assessment of all results, since we are in the process of conducting analyses on all study metrics and across varying cohorts, including race and ethnicity, gender, age, and other key demographic characteristics. I'm going to now pass this over to Samantha to review study findings.
Thank you, Julie. So first, we examined estimates of cannabis use in 2019 for the emerging adult and for the adult 21 years and older cohorts. We see that approximately half of respondents aged 16 to 20 report no lifetime cannabis use, while 12% report that their last use was more than 1 year ago, and 23% report use in the past year or more recently. Among adults 21 years old and older, about 30% report no lifetime use, while 33% report that their last use was more than 1 year ago, and 22% report use in the past year or more recently. In both age groups, we see that approximately 13 to 14% of respondents report daily use. Next slide. So the slide here shows the data presented before, but in its aggregate form, and it adds in a comparison to 2018. So the 2018 data is presented in the yellow bar, and 2019 is green. And here we find that there are no significant differences in cannabis use frequency distributions between 2018 and 2019. So this means there was no change to the percent of never users or weekly users or any of the other groups between 2018 and 19. Next slide, please. The ICPS also asked participants to report how easy or difficult it is to access cannabis. And while we do not find significant differences between adults 21 years old and older and the younger emerging adult cohort, in the aggregate, we do find differences in ease of access between 2018 and 19. So in 2018, 24% of respondents reported that cannabis was very easy to access, while in 2019, this rose to 36% of respondents. Next slide, please. The ICPS asked participants to identify which mechanisms through which they have consumed cannabis in the last year. And these questions are only asked of people reporting past year cannabis use, not the entire sample. The one mode of consumption that we see significantly differ between adults and the emerging adult subsample was concentrate use. And here, a greater percent of the emerging adults reported concentrate use as compared to adults 21 plus. Among all respondents in 2019, we see that 73% of past year cannabis users report consumption through dried herb, either smoked or vaped, and approximately 58% report edibles use. Overall, several modes show significant changes between 2018 and 19. So topical ointment cannabis use, such as skin lotions, increased from 12 to 18%. Edibles cannabis use increased from 47 to 58%. And cannabis oils or liquids consumed orally, such as drops or capsules, increased from 17 to 24%, while dried herb decreased from 81 to 73%. And all other modes of use did not show significant changes. Next slide, please. The ICPS asked participants to report whether they have received cannabis from a list of potential sources in the past year. And again, these are only asked to past year cannabis users. In 2019, the three most frequent sources of cannabis are from one's friends or family at 67%, a licensed store, cooperative, or dispensary at 40%, and a non-licensed dealer in person at 35%. There are significant differences between adults 21 years old and older and the emerging adult cohort. A greater percent of emerging adults obtained cannabis from a non-licensed dealer as compared to older adults, while a greater percent of adults 21 plus obtained cannabis from a licensed store, cooperative, or dispensary. In addition, several sources of cannabis show significant changes between 2018 and 19. Obtaining cannabis from a store, cooperative, or dispensary significantly increased from 18 to 40%. Obtaining cannabis through an internet delivery service or mail order decreased from 9 to 5%, while other sources of cannabis, including obtaining from a non-licensed dealer, did not show any significant changes. Next slide, please. The ICPS asked participants to report whether they have ever driven a vehicle within 2 hours after using cannabis, and whether they have ever ridden as a passenger with a driver who used cannabis in the past 2 hours. The driving questions are only asked to participants who report having ever used cannabis, while riding questions are asked to all respondents. In 2019, 16% of respondents who indicated lifetime use report that they have driven a vehicle within 2 hours of using cannabis. Among all respondents, 21% reported that they had ridden as a passenger in a vehicle driven by a person who used cannabis in the last 2 hours. Rates of potentially unsafe driving and riding behaviors in the last year were similar among adults 21 plus and the emerging adult subsample. And significance testing shows no differences between percent of people reporting these potentially risky driving behaviors between 2018 and 19. Next slide, please. The ICPS asks all participants to report whether they believe people generally approve or disapprove of cannabis. There were no statistically significant differences between the adults 21 plus and the emerging adult subsamples. In 2019, approximately 36% of the sample believe that people approve or strongly approve of cannabis, while approximately 29% believe that people disapprove or strongly disapprove. And significant testing showed no differences between perceived approval in 2018 and 2019. Next slide, please. We also conducted a literature overview to help contextualize these findings. And the first key point is that the results we present today likely do not reflect long-term changes. Some researchers estimate it may take up to a full generation or longer to see the full effects of legalization. Similarly, the short-term impacts are likely to vary, particularly between phases of legalization, implementation, and policy diffusion. So the results presented today show a very short-term post-legalization period and a pre-implementation period in 2018. In the literature, researchers identify multiple mechanisms through which legalization may increase adult use. These include the removal of legal barriers, reduced price, and increased access and availability. Preliminary peer-reviewed study findings support these conclusions, And specifically, these studies find a greater prevalence of cannabis use in adult samples following adult use legalization or after the number of retail stores increased in a state. And while less studied, others also suggest that the mode of cannabis use may differ in states with legal cannabis, as is supported by our current findings. However, these impacts are likely to vary across cohorts, and particularly age cohorts. For example, one study identified increases in past month cannabis use and in past year cannabis use disorder among adults 26 years old and older, but did not find a change among younger adults. Although this current study presents only high-level findings, we plan to drill deeper into potential cohort differences in an upcoming special report. And as we often note, the peer review literature is still developing, so continued data collection and monitoring is critical to better understand the long-term and the varied impact of legalization policies. Altogether, current findings suggest that adult use will increase after legalization and greater access to retail stores, but more research is needed to understand the nuanced patterns of these potential changes. And from here, I'll turn it back to Julie.
Thanks so much, Samantha. So next slide, Matt, please. So based on an assessment of the results and literature, we highlight two policy considerations for prevention. First, the Commission could continue to support and seek funding for continuing the public awareness campaign. And if funded, the Commission could consider a focus on policy education, youth prevention, and harm mitigation with revenue raised by cannabis excise taxes. Second, the Commission could continue a systematic approach, to the responsible vendor training program to ensure adequate evidence-based and comprehensive training for all cannabis industry agents, including both the adult use and medical use marijuana establishment agents, as currently only adult use agents are required to complete this training. Additionally, targeted survey assessments could assess impact of training on establishment agents and consumers. Next slide, please. Monitoring adult and emerging adult cannabis use using reliable systematic data is essential to assess changes and trends over time and to better understand the impacts of changing cannabis policy and regulations. Saying that, we highlight 4 additional considerations around data collection and monitoring. The Commission could continue to use the ICPS data to further assess rates and trends in specific cohorts, including age groups, available racial ethnicity groups, gender, and socioeconomic status from 2018 to 2019. This data allows for specific assessment of both illicit versus legal market trends and modes of cannabis use over time among different cohorts of people. If the Commission takes this direction, the Commission's research department could publish a special report, which we would supplement both the industry and social equity data assessments from an industry perspective. In addition, the Commonwealth or Commission could conduct independent studies to examine nuanced metrics of cannabis use in the Commonwealth across time. The 2018 Marijuana Baseline Health Study, conducted by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, is among the most detailed reports of cannabis use patterns and perceptions in both a general adult sample and a cannabis patient sample in Massachusetts. Continuation of this study and/or a similar study would enable assessment of varying trends in both the general and patient cohorts over time. Next slide, please, Matt. Next, the Commission could consider collaboration with public and private sector researchers and academics, including researchers and epidemiologists and government cannabis regulatory entities, including public health working groups, to continue to identify best practice monitoring tools and learn from other states with more established markets, as well as the University of Waterloo on the ICPS study to continue to assess cannabis use and behaviors, including information about the illicit cannabis market and modes of consumption, which are 2 critical but currently understudied metrics. Finally, the Commission and its relevant state government agencies could work with healthcare systems, college healthcare centers, and researchers to monitor the rates of cannabis use disorder in adults and emerging adult presenting to any healthcare setting with acute cannabis use symptoms or related cannabis use health concerns. As part of this collaboration, FOCI could extend to securing ongoing surveillance measurements by the Commonwealth, including adding cannabis use metrics and or optional cannabis-specific modules to pre-existing surveillance data, such as the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, which is the adult part, and the Youth Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, which we use in our private youth report, and Poison Control Center data. Next slide, please, Matt. Again, we would like to acknowledge Dr. Hammond and the entire International Cannabis Policy Study team, as well as the Commission's leadership team for funding this important collaboration, which will be helpful in many areas of our research agenda moving forward. Next slide, please. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. We are happy to take questions, but I know you've had a long day.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Johnson, Ms. Doonan. That was fascinating and quite informative. So really appreciate the effort that went into that. And let me turn it over to my fellow commissioners to see if there are any questions for either Dr. Johnson or Ms. Doonan.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Flanagan.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank Dr. Johnson and Samantha for their presentation today. I realize that your job is very difficult given the data sets that you have and the fact that there's a lot of places that just don't collect the data that you need. So having to overcome that obstacle is really a feat that should be commended for you and your entire team. So I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the explanation. I think it's important given not only the pandemic that we're living through, but given the baseline information we have so that going forward, the Commonwealth can really look to this data to try to adjust any policy decisions that are made on Beacon Hill, and then any decisions that we might be able to make as regulators. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Flanagan.
Thank you, Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Title, Commissioner McBride, any questions or comments?
I had a quick question.
Please go ahead.
Question. Is there a definition of illicit market that's a common definition that's used, in either this report or kind of generally? And the reason that I'm asking that is because if you look at past numbers, right, or sort of past numbers that have been thrown around, people talk about this number of 70% of consumers get their transactions occur on the illicit market, right? In the past, that's kind of been like a number that has been thrown out there in Massachusetts. And now when we look at this data, right, we see, okay, 35, this isn't now granted, like not necessarily just Massachusetts, but 35% get it from what's considered to be a dealer, 67% from a family or friend. Neither of those, right, are regulated ways of getting cannabis. So I'm just curious about places too, right? Sort of the common phrases or the common language that is being used. Is there a definition that is used as a kind of a common definition?
We would have to go back to the actual methods in this specific data set, but usually it's illicit and then gray market and then like this gray market area in the illicit market. So the legal regulated illicit market, which includes this gray market because it could be legally produced, such as like home grow, but illegally sold. Right. And so those are different distinctions. In this, it's hard to know. We can't discern out friends and family whether they legally or illegally purchased or manufactured their marijuana. And that's something that we just got to keep on assessing. This data set is fantastic and a novel process because this is the only data set I know of that actually asks explicitly about the illicit market and dealing and things like that. So this is the best way we can get at it, but still there's some, things that we can't disentangle.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions for Dr. Johnson or Ms. Doonan?
No questions from me. Just thank you both for your excellent work as always.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Title.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. I know you went through that pretty quickly. I appreciate that as well. But I hope you don't feel that going through it that quickly in any way, shape, or form indicates our lack of interest or belief that what you're doing is incredibly important. So thank you for that. Thanks again. Let's move on, Matt, if we could, to the next agenda item. There are 3 topics left for this agenda, 3 commission discussion and vote topics. The first being executive director goals, and I promised earlier I would give just a little context here before we jumped into it. So if everybody can recall, last year Sean and I developed a proposed set of goals for him as executive director. We reviewed and modified those goals and then voted on them at a public meeting. Several months ago, I don't remember exactly when, several months ago, Sean gave an update on performance versus those goals. And so the first order of business today is a subsequent update in terms of performance versus the goals from last year. Similar to last year, the executive director and I worked on a proposed set of goals for the current year. Again, Sean and I went back and forth a few times, got to a place that I think we're both comfortable with personally, but the next step, an appropriate step, is to bring them in front of the commission today to get input and feedback. And then based upon that input and feedback, we'll come back at a subsequent meeting and vote to finalize those goals. But we wanted to get them on the table today, at least the proposed goals that Sean and I have developed, get them on the table today, as I said, for commission input and feedback. Third, one of the goals that Sean has is to create a commission-wide performance management system. And I think he's going to give us just a little update on how his intent is to translate the goals that are agreed on at the commission, his goals that are agreed on at the commission, how that gets cascaded and translated into departmental and individual goals across the commission. So those are the three items on the agenda today. We do not need to take a vote on Sean's goals for the current year unless there's immediate consensus that we got them right. But my expectation is we'll get some feedback and input, work on them, and come back and vote on them at a subsequent commission meeting. So that being said, Mr. Executive Director, will you start by giving an assessment of your performance versus last year's goals?
Sure, I'm happy to. I think I'm doing well. So that should be a baseline for discussion purposes. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, there were 10 goals that I was working against. And when I say I was working against, I'm actually misspeaking. This is an entire agency-wide lift, and one of the biggest privileges is working with the team that we have, and they've really been, I think, the driving force behind a lot of our success. So if I misspeak again, I'll try to catch myself, but these really should be we statements. That said, the first goal here is to improve efficiencies in our licensing process to get that initial review for completeness done within 60 days of 4-packet submission. Earlier in the year, I was relatively cautious about our success here. As I indicated at the earlier part of the meeting, we are now within 2 days of submission, so I think we've really tackled this one with an aggressive approach, and that's really due in large part to the staff we have in our, and obviously with Director Potvin on the licensing team and Yao Jibi, our Chief of Investigations, really focusing on it, as well as staffing up. I think that's been the biggest contribution here, adding the role of licensing specialist, adding to the ranks of licensing specialist, adding the role of a licensing manager to oversee that work, and also the role of a licensing analyst to look at some of our data and help us with where we can find deficiencies. So this one, I think we can safely say is 100%, but I do want to remain diligent and vigilant in keeping tabs on it. The next goal was to develop mechanisms to intake, acknowledge, and assign inquiries from constituents and stakeholders within 24 hours. I declared this as being 75%, primarily because we know we can always be more responsive. We know that customer service is a priority of this agency, and obviously it's something we're always going to aspire to do. And I'm sure there are a number of, there's a lot of, a good amount of anecdotal evidence that this is an area we should be continuing to focus on in making our agency accessible. One of the things I am proud of, though, is that when we did go remote, which happened in March, given the international pandemic we're still in the midst of, we were still able to maintain our phone lines and maintain a robust constituent service operation, which is something we're really proud of. So I don't think we've limited or lost anything during this remote period. In fact, I think we've become more efficient as an entire team, and this is an area where we still want to continue our focus. Number 3 is patient registrations evaluated, processed, including renewals within 1 week of submission. The biggest effort here was taking the former patient portal out of the virtual gateway that continues to be maintained and controlled by the Executive Office of Health and Human Services and bringing it into our existing licensing portal environment. That change brought a lot of efficiencies for us just based on process and allowed us to automate a lot of our reviews. So I think this one is safely 100%. The majority of applications, and approximately 85 to 90% are automated. The remainder are things that we have a direct API with the RMV. So if you use your license photo, that's the element that can be automated. If you submit something, say for instance, a passport photo or something along those lines, we do have to manually review that, but that volume is such that we're able to manage it within that 1 week's period. The next number 4, really is budgeting, FY21 budget proposal. This one I'm saying is 100%, but I think I have to acknowledge that the budget cycle this year has been unique. Beacon Hill, actually, as of this week, is still debating their budget for FY21. The governor resubmitted his fiscal year proposal. The House just last week considered theirs. The Senate just this week considered theirs. They still have not entered a conference committee. That said, we did submit a proposal that identifies our strategic goals, identifies the needs of our agency, and we do believe lives up to our mission and our values. We have been working against an interim budget. It is not near what we would need to continue our growth. I mentioned earlier in the licensing process where we've had to add staff to find those efficiencies. That is true across the agency, and so the budget we proposed did suggest a relatively sizable increase, but it acknowledged our need to grow, and it, particularly in the investigator, compliance officer, and inspectional ranks. We're confident that the legislature sees the value of that, but we'll also continue communicating with them as they evaluate their budget scenarios, which of course have been hampered by a significant loss of revenue for the Commonwealth. So I'm declaring this as being 100% complete because we are afloat, the lights are on, and we're also continuing to operate in this remote environment. But this too is an ongoing goal that we'll continue to monitor. Number 5 is the enterprise-wide case management system. That has been deployed. We are now, I think, really getting into it, really getting our feet wet with it, really building it into our culture, building it into our day-to-day operations. And I would describe it as the process of developing good, strong habits of utilizing it across the agency. Not surprisingly, the bulk of the folks that are in there right now are the compliance officers and investigators, as well as our licensing staff. That is the majority of interactions that would need to be memorialized in such a management system. We're also bringing in other parts of the agencies, including constituent services and other process workflow-based elements of the agency. So it is deployed. A lot of credit to our IT staff and our partner. We're using MS Dynamics. We're largely a Microsoft-based agency, as we're in a Teams environment for these types of meetings as well. So right now we're trying to maximize our use of their software, and I have to give them credit. They deployed a project and a product within just a number of weeks and stood it up relatively quickly. So again, it's 100% complete because we developed it and deployed it. Now we just got to make sure we stay honest about using it. Which brings me to number 6, performance evaluation. Mr. Chairman, you indicated that we've rolled this out. I'm certainly happy to demonstrate some evidence to that effect. I described this as being 75% complete because we're beginning to roll it out right now. So we haven't fully integrated it into our ongoing day-to-day or periodic process, but it is something that our staff has begun to develop their departmental goals, and then of course that'll cascade into individual goals. But obviously, as you set my goals in this meeting and future conversations, that'll be something that cascades again back down to staff and will give us a chance to really utilize that project. The next one, number 7, is a 2-year staffing plan. I describe this as being 50% complete. Of all the goals, I think this would be naturally the last to come. If we're developing a budget, we're developing performance evaluations and those types of metrics. The staffing, I think, needs to fit into those conversations. And as we're doing that, I think we could sincerely say that as we're developing our budget, inherently as part of that conversation is a staffing discussion. I just don't want to be too clever in saying that we've done it. Because I think the other thing we want to take a look at is, as we've established our agency, we've built it very quickly. And a 2-year staffing plan, I think, requires us to reflect as well on where we are, where we're going, and look back at the structure we have and the organizational structure we've been establishing, really, again, aggressively, but certainly on a needs-based basis. And now I think we want to have that reflective conversation and a more strategic conversation about where we'd like to go as an entire agency and enterprise. So I describe this as being 50% complete, but again, I think it's really an attempt to be I don't know if it's modest to call yourself modest, but the next, number 8, is an annual survey for employee satisfaction. Excuse me. We did do this. This is actually one of the more exciting pieces we've done in the past year. Is we did an employee engagement survey. It's a 12-question survey through Gallup, and it's one that I think really our staff did. The response rate amongst our staff was 100%, which I think right there alone is a demonstration of engagement. But we're now beginning the phase of that engagement survey that engages directly with staff and ask them, you told us this, there's some themes that are developing there. The results were overall very, very positive and very encouraging, but it also identified some areas we need to focus on. And I think that's exactly what an employee engagement survey ought to do. And it's obviously something that by describing it as annual, I think that implies an intent to continue doing it. And that's certainly something we want to do. But we do want to find a way to bring our staff into these conversations and make them a real meaningful part of our agency, our operations, and our culture. Number 9 is the employee handbook. I think straightforward. An employee handbook was developed and issued. I think it does demonstrate the Commission's mission and values of being a world-class agency and being a great place to work. That has been successfully completed and rolled out to our staff. We're now cascading some other elements from that, including operations, SOPs, et cetera, that I think breathes some additional life into that handbook, which brings me to the point of the handbook is that's something we're also going to live. It should be a living document that doesn't just sit on a shelf, but instead is something we continue to evaluate and reassess as we mature as an agency. And lastly, I think a catch-all, but certainly important, is that we continue to meet our legislatively mandated deadlines. We have done that, and it's something we're very proud of. And of course, the Commission plays a big role in that as well through your consideration of proposals and your adoption of different reports. So that's the 10 goals, and I think we've been very busy. Not included in here was that pandemic and the elements that had stemmed from that, but we've certainly responded to those with a similar aggressiveness as well. Again, happy to take any questions or thoughts the Commission may have.
Yeah, somehow when we were preparing these goals back, I think it was last fall, we didn't forecast the pandemic. So
that's true.
Let me again. Are there questions or comments for Sean on these goals and his assessment of our progress versus those goals?
Mr. Chairman,
it's Commissioner Flanagan.
I just want to say that I appreciate the explanation by the executive director. I think that these goals are helpful in some respects. I think in other respects, this doesn't show the ability for the executive director to be able to pivot to handle major crises that come before us. Not only the pandemic and having to move an entire staff remotely, which with his foresight, we were able to do within a couple of days, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but also the vape ban crisis, and also having to deal with people possibly getting sick from these vape bans. So I think that this is a great start, but there's a lot more that's happened in the last year that we can actually be proud of, in the fact that this agency, under the leadership of the executive director, has been able to pivot and to really handle at a moment's notice. I just don't want to lose sight of the bigger picture rather than 10 specific action items.
Thank you, Commissioner Flanagan. I couldn't agree more with what you said, so thank you very much for that. Commissioner Title or Commissioner McBride, are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Title?
That was very well said by Commissioner Flanagan. Well put, definitely agree. I had just one other comment, which is that it would be great to see or think about a goal having to do with the new commissioners, because for us, the original 5 of us predated the staff, and we've been hands-on, and we've had the privilege and ability to grow with the organization. I think it would be very different when new people come on, especially when it's remote. So just making sure that they have what they need to do their job.
I think that's getting into goals that we're about to propose to discuss for the current year, and that's in there already. But we'll certainly make sure that's included.
Sorry for jumping the gun then, Mr. Chairman.
It's a great transition, but let me, before we make that transition, Commissioner McBride, any comments or questions?
I just want to second Commissioner Flanagan's comments.
Okay.
And thank the executive director.
Okay, Mr. Executive Director, let's move on to proposed goals for the coming year. Again, I'd appreciate it if you would lead the conversation here. I just want to make sure, again, the context is clear, which is that the Executive Director and I kind of went through a couple iterations to get here. I won't speak for him, but I believe that both he and I are comfortable with these as a proposal. But the next step is to get input from the commission and make whatever changes are appropriate to finalize these goals at an upcoming meeting. So, Mr. Executive Director, if you could walk through these, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first is to maintain and improve the FY19, FY20 levels of constituent service and support. This reflects, I think, an ongoing goal that I think is going to be an evergreen goal as far as constituent service and responsiveness and customer service are certainly a priority of any entity, and I think also a priority within government as well. So maintaining and improving is certainly aspirational and I think well placed. The next item is that dynamics rollout I indicated as far as our progress in the previous year. We have deployed a system. We just now need to ensure that we're using it effectively and also using it completely across all departments. And obviously the staff compliance on data entry is that, are we building good habits? Third is expand data collection and organization throughout the agency and integrating it into aspects of our functions. And then there's the litany of those functions. I think to briefly describe this goal is that open data ought to be a priority, and open data, I think in a real sincere, genuine way. If we're collecting robust volumes of data and we're not using it as an agency, then that's a missed opportunity. And I think finding ways to integrate it into how we function is critical, not just for the public to see the information, but also for us to organize it in such a way that it's useful for us and again across the agency, and also useful for you as policymakers. The fourth goal here is an agency-wide job classification study. That is, I think, the continuation I referenced in the context of the 2-year staffing plan, that we want to have a strategic conversation about the structure of our agency across the board and across various departments. I think a job classification study is a task within that to look at that long-term organizational success, but also being sure that our departments are similarly situated so that like titles and like roles, peer-to-peer, so to speak, is visible and apparent. So I think a job classification study facilitates that. Moving ahead to numbers 5 and others here.
Yeah, I think the numbering system starts again. So
it does.
Page 2, number 1.
1B or number 4 or 5. Or anyway, moving ahead here, the develop and submit a FY21, FY22 budget. Changing the dates, but not changing the goal. Again, continuing to live up to our needs, developing our needs, identifying our needs, working with departments, working with commissioners, and ensuring that we have adequate resources to meet our mission is important. And then whatever allotment or allocation we're able to secure, making sure it's spent in a way that is sufficient and adequate for our operations is, again, I think one of those evergreen goals. Next item, number, I guess 6 it would be, is continuing to anticipate all those deadlines, again, an evergreen goal, and meeting our statutory obligations. The next goal here, I guess 3 on this page, is that we continue to meet the statutory mandates relative to our research studies. So as you just heard from Dr. Johnson, we are deep into the research agenda that has been is set by statute, but also been prioritized by you as well as the entire agency. The goal here is to bring that research to the public and to other policymakers, knowing that there are other jurisdictions across the country that will certainly be looking to this jurisdiction, but there's also policymakers here within the state across different agencies and certainly within the legislature. We've been asked to research these items for a number of reasons, but first and foremost is that we get smarter as a Commonwealth, and we want to make sure we're bringing our research to as many people as possible so they can use that information in developing their own policies, and also so that you as policymakers can do the same. The last goal here on this page is a 3-year strategic plan for the social equity program. Not too long ago, the commission had a discussion relative to the social equity program and tried, I think, to frame as best as we were able, what are the goals of the social equity program? Where are we going with that program? And how does that fit into a broader equity mission where we know the social equity program alone is not the equity mission or vision for the agency or the Commonwealth for that matter. But that's, I think, something that we need to wrestle with and really get our head around, including, though, what are the metrics we're going to use to determine and define success. So here, I think, that's a big, bold goal, but I think it's worth it. And having a 3-year strategic plan allows us to build out a ramp or some sort of runway that we can then work against and start meeting milestones within that 3-year goal. So again, prioritizing the social equity program as one of our equity measures. And lastly, in big bold print, the full rollout of a staff-wide performance management process, including those cascading goals, as I mentioned earlier. This is, I think, a continuation of the process we've had to date. I mentioned earlier that we have a performance management structure that we've begun to roll out. This will be a continuation of that. And then obviously, as you develop my goals, those goals should cascade and do cascade down to our staff, who really, their work is what allows these goals to be realized and completed throughout the year. And lastly, and finally, is the using the results and the findings of that employee engagement survey to implement organizational, structural, and strategic change where necessary, and also building and maintaining our engagement. So I mentioned that survey was overall very positive. And so in some cases, the outcome of that is going to be continuing to do exactly what we're doing. In other cases, though, if there is a message within that engagement survey that we need to make some changes, being open-minded about that and engaging our staff directly in what those changes ought to be. But I don't want to make change for the sake of change. If we do need to preserve something or hone something even further, we will certainly do that. So I didn't want to imply that the only thing we need to do is change things. I think we are doing some things really well, and I think our staff would agree.
Okay, thank you, Sean. So what I think we should do with the time we have today is seek input from all the commissioners on this list. And I guess there's kind of 3 categories of input. One is things we missed. I think Commissioner Teitel has already raised one topic that she thinks should be included. But other topics that we might have missed, things that you think should not be included in this list. And finally, anything that's on this list you think is misworded or needs to be restructured or restated. And again, the objective would be to get the input from the commissioners today and rework this and bring it back to a subsequent commission meeting for further discussion and vote ultimately. So Commissioner Teitel, can you just re-articulate what you were looking for in terms of something about the integration of new commissioners?
I think you articulated it well. Just ensuring that there's a process for new commissioners and that they, I guess it's both like onboarding them, but also just it's a cultural thing of kind of specifying how they fit into the agency.
I think that's really important. Other Commissioner Todd, do you have other suggested additions or before I turn to other commissioners?
No, thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Flanagan, Commissioner McBride, are there additions, deletions, rewordings that you think are necessary here?
Mr. Chairman, I would like time between now and the next meeting to flesh out I think if you go back a slide, it might be on the slide previous, but when we talk about the social equity program.
Yes, that's the last. Matt, could you get back to the last slide, please? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
It's either the last one or the one before. I'm not sure, but so number 4, I think we need a strategic plan for the equity program. My question is what the measurable goals are and what constitutes success. For me, it's always been about having a true impact and not necessarily having great numbers or large numbers to look back on. For instance, we have the social equity program, we have people attending the seminars and what have you. I'd rather have 10 people who actually make it through the program and go on to be successful in whichever track that they choose, rather than having 70 people in a program that don't really follow through and participate in the program. So I'd like time to and I can do this with the executive director. I could do this with the community outreach director, to really try to flesh out what exactly the goals are, because I think that, you know, as Commissioner Title has said, you know, we're the first 5. We kind of grew with the staff. We were here first. We predated everybody. And we've been building this fire truck on the way to the fire for as long as I can remember. And so I think now, if we have some time to be strategic in our thoughts and try to really envision what we want to have as an impact, then that might be helpful for the executive director to have an attainable goal. I think that just having a plan is just putting something on paper. And to me, putting something on paper isn't as meaningful as actually having some actionable items behind it.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Strong. And I think that's, you know, both incredibly well said, and I would really appreciate follow up with the executive director as we come, you know, prepare to come back to the commission with an updated version of this. But thank you, and I think we will absolutely allow for the time to do what you suggested. Commissioner McBride, any deletions, additions, or comments on the goals that are currently on the table?
I would just like to concur with both Commissioner Title and Commissioner Flanagan's suggestions.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the one other thing I'd like to ask about is number 3, and I apologize for taking up so much time. I understand we have a lot to do today that we did. Number 3 looks really familiar from agencies similar to ours, and I think that Dr. Johnson has often spoke about, you know, research conferences or summits and looking to partner with people. I think that we need to be realistic in our expectations with that, given, one, the pandemic, and I would really like to showcase the work of the commission in person, not virtually. I don't think it has the same impact. I think anyone can tell you from a mental health or behavioral health perspective, Zoom meetings just don't cut it when it comes to human interaction. But I also think that it's important to understand the financial piece that goes along with that. You know, as the executive director said, the Senate just finished their budget, I believe it was yesterday, and now they're going to go into the conference committee. We don't know what the next couple of budgets are going to look like. We don't know what's happening, what's coming down from the federal government, and what extra dollars we're going to have to be able to put something like this on. I would like to make sure that when we do it, that we do it right, and again, not just to fulfill something on a piece of paper. So I'd like us to take a look at, I know it says including but not limited to, but I'd like us to take a look at looking out beyond a year to see what actionable goals can possibly happen, and really confer with Dr. Johnson and her team, because I'm not sure people know, I mean, they're getting published. I mean, people are recognizing the work that's happening here in Massachusetts. Between Samantha and Dr. Johnson, they're doing a lot of great work, and they're getting a heck of a lot of recognition that I think goes unnoticed by the general public because they're heads down in writing and doing what they do. But I'd like to either table it or look at it for further than a year from now.
I think, again, as you suggested on your previous point, I think it would be great, and I would certainly welcome, and I presume the executive director and Dr. Johnson will welcome working with them on that point to establish the objectives that you were just referring to, and then we'll bring that back to the commission as part of an updated version of goals. So if you wouldn't mind collaborating with the executive director and Dr. Johnson on revising this goal, I think that'd be great.
Sure.
Thanks. Any other comments or suggestions? Then, Mr. Executive Director, do you want to talk more about the cascading of your goals, or what are your thoughts?
I think I'll just be very brief if you'll indulge me. I think it's fair to say that some of these goals, I think last year's as well as the proposed goals that are before you now, can be more aptly described as being tasks or metrics within a larger overarching goal. So what we are doing across the agency, and I think this just further demonstrates the performance management system we're putting in place, is we're trying to place those in the proper structure and bucket, so to speak, where there are metrics against which you can measure performance and measure your success toward an overarching goal. So some of these, I think, are very specific tasks that we can say, using, for instance, the first goal that's on the screen here about the budget itself. That fits within a broader theme of making sure the commission has its overall capabilities of performing against its statutory, regulatory, and again, it's the commission declared mission. You can succeed or fail if you don't actually secure the funding. So what we're doing across the agency, and what I would intend to do with each of these goals, is put them into that structure of the overall overarching theme of the goal is what. The metrics against it, one certainly would be the securing the sufficient budget, looking at things, for instance, like the adequacy of our constituent service, operations, the adequacy of the supplies they have, including, for instance, our phone system and very specific items like that. And then when we are actually able to achieve that based on our estimates, and what that will allow me to do is prioritize, knowing that 10 things at once is a lot to bite off, especially when you're dealing with the day-to-day other elements of the agency. But that is really the goal of our performance management system, is to make sure that things are properly categorized and that we do have some expectations about what is prioritized. Because in talking with each of our staff and each of our departments, making sure our priorities are aligned is one of the biggest items to, if it's misaligned, I think you'll notice. And if it's aligned, I think you'll experience that success as well. So again, that's really the goal of our entire performance management system. So my intention would be to take each of these goals, if and once adopted by the commission, and put it into that structure and format. So, but it's a busy, kind of cluttered document, but just wanted to advise the commission that would be my intention.
Thank you. Mr. Flanagan, did you have?
Mr. Chairman, one question. Has the executive director been evaluated from this past year yet?
It's in process right now based upon input that's been received by from all the commissioners, as well as the executive director's direct reports, and as well as the document that he just went through in terms of his performance versus last year's goal. So that will happen over the next week or two.
So that's expected to be done before we have the new goals, right?
Yep. Yes, that's correct.
Because my interest or curiosity is if any of the past goals need to just roll over to the next year. I feel as though, you know, like the budget, it's a continuing goal to have. But my curiosity would be if there's anything that needs to be added from last year to the next year.
I think we have tried to roll some things over from where appropriate from last year, but I welcome, you know, as you think about this over the next few weeks before we reconvene to discuss this, I welcome your input about if you think there are other goals that need to be carried over from last year.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Mr. Collins, anything else that you'd like to discuss here, or should we move on to the next agenda item?
Nothing further from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Matt, if we go back to the agenda then, please. Thank you. The next topic is authorization of the general request from the general counsel to authorize our participation in a court case by filing an amicus brief. I would like to read the general counsel's request and suggestion about language for a motion, and then discuss it if necessary, and then ask one of the commissioners to make such a motion. But her proposed language is as follows, and I'm quoting: move to approve the commission's participation as an amicus curiae in the matter of SJC-13010 Mediri versus City of Salem and others, to delegate to the executive director and his designee, the general counsel, the authority to draft and file the brief, and if necessary to appear for oral argument, and to coordinate as necessary with the office of the attorney general and the state solicitor. So that's the proposed motion, or the language that General Counsel Bailey has requested. Before I ask for such a motion, General Counsel, is there anything you'd like to add to that for context? And then obviously if their commissioners have comments or questions, I welcome them as well. But General Counsel Bailey, anything you'd like to add in terms of context?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from commissioners on this topic? Commissioner Teitel, are you just turned your camera on?
Yes, thank you. So I guess I'll outline what my concerns are. there are plenty of other topics where it would be totally appropriate for us to file an amicus brief, and I would be totally fine with delegating that to the staff. This is not a routine topic. This is, in my opinion, the overarching topic that influences everything that we do and everything that all of our results. Our decision to require an HCA, but not review HCAs, has led to a really unfortunate result. In my opinion, at the time that we made it, I said that HCAs and local approval were the mother of all barriers to entry, that it would be a historic decision, and I continue to believe that. I think it's one thing if we feel that the way the law is written, we had to set up our process that way. And I'm very glad that we sent a letter to the legislature requesting the authority to review HCAs. But it's another thing entirely for us to basically advocate for that process to a court. If that's what we're doing. So that's what my concern is. I think that the HCA process is the main root of all of the inequity that we see in the cannabis industry in this state. I think the local approval process is rife with barriers, with systemic racism, with zero accountability whatsoever. I get calls, I would say not one day goes by that I don't hear from someone in a group that we are supposed to be encouraging, whether it's equity applicants, economic empowerment applicants, women or minority or veteran-owned businesses or small businesses or co-ops, that they feel they didn't get a fair opportunity because of the HCA process. And I tell them that I'm so sorry, there's nothing I can do. I feel like I just have to go one municipality to the next out of 351, just begging them to consider being equitable and offering to help however we can. And this has been going on for years. My biggest concern about delivery, which I'm so proud of all the decisions that we've made, is how the HCA and local approval process will play out. And so it's really, really important that, to me, that either the court gets that perspective or that they just have the opportunity to look at the law, and make their own reading. So that's what my concerns are. If need be, I do intend to look into what my options would be to file a brief myself with all of this information and perspective. And basically, I think to conclude, if the HCA requirement was not in place for our applicants, that would completely revolutionize the process and the industry from an equity perspective. So this is really, really important.
Thank you, Commissioner Tuttle. I obviously agree with a lot of what you said. I guess the one thing I would push back on is your use of the word advocacy. My understanding, and again, I'm always at the disadvantage of not being an attorney, but my understanding of filing an amicus is not to advocate for anything, but to say, here is the law, here is our process. So I wouldn't expect, and General Counsel Bailey, please disagree with me if I'm wrong, I don't expect this brief to advocate for anything other than saying, here's the current process that the commission follows based upon the law and our regulations. Is that a fair assessment, General Counsel Bailey?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Yes, in general, we're acting as a friend to the court and providing information to the court about issues that it is interested in. I would say that while we will not advocate for a particular party, we may indicate to the court that if they were to decide things one way or the other, there could be implications for the commission's license application process.
Thank you. Other comments from Commissioners McBride or Flanagan? Commissioner McBride?
I'd just like for the general counsel to read the question that the SJC has asked so that we have it sort of out in the public domain and on the record. So to provide context to people who are listening right now or watch this later as to what is being asked and the reasoning that we're even having this discussion right now.
Thank you. I think it's a great suggestion. Go ahead, General Counsel.
Yes, so thank you, Chairman and Commissioner McBride. The SJC has asked for amicus briefs on the following issue, where an applicant for a marijuana retail establishment license has obtained a special permit to operate under applicable zoning bylaws or ordinances. The applicant contends that it has met all the requirements of the municipality's application process, and it contends that an applicant may not proceed to the Cannabis Control Commission without a certification that it has executed a host community agreement with the municipality, whether a municipality's decision not to execute a HCA with the applicant impermissibly usurps the authority of the commission to determine to whom a marijuana retail establishment license will issue pursuant to General Law Chapter 94G. And I would note that this announcement is on the SJC's pages in terms of amicus announcements and also on the docket for the case.
Thanks. Thank you, General Counsel. Commissioner McBride?
So the question that is being asked is one of process, and it's one of our process. What is our process, and how does our process influence other government entities' processes with regard to the entirety of receiving a license to operate a marijuana establishment in the state of Massachusetts? If we fail to take the opportunity where the SJC, right, the highest court in the state, is seeking for input on that, if we fail to take that opportunity as the agency that understands that process and what our process looks like today and what it has looked like, regardless of the other arguments that can be made about whether that process should change, whether it, it may be changing, whether, what the state of play is right now today, we are the agency, the entity that has the subject matter expertise on what our process is. And so if we do not weigh in on this, we are foregoing an opportunity to inform the court at their request as to what our process is. And I would imagine that that would be taken into consideration and feed into, the larger overall discussion and deliberation of the court. But by not weighing in the way that we are being asked to weigh in, I believe that we are foregoing an opportunity to educate the court as to what our process is now, and then enable them to make a fully informed decision about overall what that process looks like and the merits of the case before them.
Thank you, Commissioner McBride. Other comments or questions before I ask for a motion? Commissioner Teitel?
Just to clarify, were we asked to weigh in and clarify our process?
General Counsel?
Yes, so thank you, Commissioner Teitel. An amicus announcement is made to the general public. Because we were involved in an earlier proceeding, we've been monitoring this case. And so when the case was transferred by the SJC, we became aware of this amicus issue. To Commissioner McBride's point, our statutes, regulations, and process are at issue in the case, and the court's clearly interested in them. And so it's my opinion that amicus participation makes sense, which is a perspective that's shared by the AGO's office.
But just to be clear, we were not asked to clarify our process.
No, they made a general announcement to the public asking for amicus briefs on this issue, but not specifically to us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions before I ask for a motion to vote on the motion? Then let me repeat the proposed motion, and I will ask one of the commissioners to make this motion, please. The motion reads, or the proposed motion reads, move to approve the commission's participation as an amicus curiae in the matter of SJC-13010 Mediri Inc. versus City of Salem and others, to delegate to the executive director and his delegee, the general counsel, the authority to draft and file the brief, and if necessary, to appear for oral argument and to coordinate as necessary with the Office of the Attorney General and the State Solicitor. Can I ask one of my fellow commissioners to make such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I ask for a second, please? Is that Commissioner Brown? You were on mute, but I think I saw you.
Second, yes.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Title?
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission approved the motion by a vote of 3 in favor. Commissioners Flanagan, McBride, and Hoffman, with Commissioner Title voting no. General Counsel, is there anything else on this topic?
No, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the last agenda item is a policy conversation on proposed delivery regulations. Let me try to put some parameters around this without going through the entire regulatory history. After we developed draft regulations, including delivery regulations, we held a public hearing and a public comment period. We then met on October 20th. To discuss whether we want to make any policy changes with respect to delivery based upon what we heard in public comment. We did indeed on the 20th agree to some policy changes for delivery. We got a large amount of pushback from people that felt that they hadn't had a chance to reflect on these or give input to these policy changes. We agreed, therefore, to hold a public hearing, which we did last Friday. And the purpose of today's conversation is to discuss whether we would like to make any changes to our delivery policy based upon the feedback we received at the public hearing last Friday. The objective is to finalize that policy and then make sure that any changes that we do make today, if any, get embedded into the regulation, the draft regulations, so that we can vote on the entire set of regulations on the 30th of November. So I think it's really important that we focus just on delivery. The rest of the policies are embedded and finalized, and the really only open issue is with respect to delivery. I would like to ask Commissioner McBride to lead the first part of the conversation on a couple of issues that were both open at our meeting on the 20th, as well as things that have come up subsequently. I think there's a couple of suggestions. If I could ask Commissioner McBride to lead the first part of the conversation, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I have 2 primary suggestions. So the first is to decouple the retail license cap from the delivery license cap. And the second is to prevent monopolization by placing guardrails around the relationships that third-party technology platform providers and delivery licensees may have. That is an idea that has already been out there, but it's kind of drilling down on that. So I'll take these in turn. First, decouple the retail license cap from the delivery license cap. My suggestion here would be to amend 935 CMR 500.050 to reflect the statutory allowance of up to 3 retail licenses and the commission policy decision to allow up to 2 delivery licenses. The reason for this is that the delivery license is a different license than the retail license. Both types of delivery license are. Here is a situation where we have a long acknowledged statutory cap of 3 retail licenses, and that has been in existence in the statute. And I think that our regs need to be aligned to reflect that. So it would be decoupling those ideas, which right now are included in 050 as a combination of the 2 licenses being capped at 3. The second is to prevent the monopolization by placing guardrails around these relationships. So there's a series of suggestions I would make here. One is to make it explicit that third-party tech platforms may contract with an unlimited number of delivery licensees. I think that there has been subsequent discussion after our policy discussions, and I see the utility in clarifying this and making sure that that it is open, that tech platforms can contract with whatever delivery operators or couriers they think, and vice versa. The second point would be to prohibit delivery licensees from accepting any direct or indirect investments of any amount from third-party tech platforms, and that would be that tech platforms aren't operated by the delivery licensee themselves, or aren't proprietary platforms. Third would be to prohibit behavior that would be considered to be an inducement. And here I would actually borrow language that exists right now in ABCC regulations in 204 CMR 2.08 and modify it. And essentially what it comes down to is that no licensee shall directly or indirectly give or permit to be given money or any other thing of substantial value in any effort to induce any person to persuade or influence any other person to purchase, to contract, or to refrain from purchasing or contracting. And so it would make that explicit in the regulations. The next part would be to make explicit that monopolization or attempts at monopolization are prohibited under our regulations. And here I would suggest that we borrow language that comes from the antitrust statutes that are currently exist under Chapter 93 of our general laws. The next point would be to make infractions infractions of the monopolization, any attempt to monopolize, a violation under 500.450, which are grounds for suspension, revocation, and denial of renewal applications under our own regulations. Next, it would be contracts for third-party tech platform services must restrict determinations of placement of product or delivery operations on an app to objective, customer-oriented criteria. So it would be to ensure that it is consumer-driven as opposed to driven by something that would be akin to a pay-to-play type of format. The last 2 points are to prior to final licensure, delivery operators would submit their contracts with third-party tech platforms to the commission. And then the final point would be to allow for there to be things like banner advertising, but that it can't be a factor in determining placement of a product on an app. So you can't kind of move up the ranks and have your products be placed at the top by virtue of the fact that you're buying advertising on the app. And it also needs to include a clear and conspicuous disclosure that it's paid advertising. So I know that's a lot.
That is a lot, but thank you very much, Commissioner McBride. I would suggest that we take those in turn, but before we get into them, are there any other topics that Commissioners Flanagan or Title would like to raise with respect to delivery before we start discussing the two topics that Commissioner McBride just went through? Commissioner Flanagan?
I don't, unless you want to talk about deferring it again.
You're welcome to put that on the table if you'd like. So I will recognize that. Commissioner Title, any additional topics you would like to raise with respect to delivery and based on the feedback we got?
No,
okay. So I think therefore we have three topics to go through. I'm going to suggest we go through them in the order they're raised, starting with Commissioner McBride's suggestion about modifying what we had said before in terms of cap limits. So Commissioner McBride, anything else you'd like to add to that before we ask for other comments or questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. Are there comments or questions for Commissioner McBride, or any comments on this topic, Commissioner Title?
I'm sorry. Can I just ask Commissioner McBride to repeat the rationale?
Yeah. So we've made it very clear that the delivery licenses, both types, are different than the retail license, right? I mean, we've made that, it's very explicit, both, I think, in format as well as what will be the practice once licensees are existent and up and running. Here we have a statutory cap of 3 retail licenses, right? The statute explicitly says may have up to 3, right? And retail licenses and then other types, but that is embedded in statute. I think that our regs, we adopted that. We have lived under that. That's been where we are for the past 3 years. And I think that we need to continue with that as what our policy is, because a retail license is different than the delivery license. So putting them together, combining them, is contrary to how we've operated for the last 3 years. And I think it's also contrary to what is spelled out in statute.
Commissioner Tuttle?
What do you think of the rationale that that all is true, but also we created the delivery license and we have the authority to put a limitation on the delivery license, and we could put a limitation that takes into account how many retail licenses are held?
I mean, I think that we are still left with the fact that we have a statute that says you may have up to this many. And so I think, you know, in being very careful about delineating retail versus delivery, I think that it's important that we adhere to the difference in retail versus delivery and the categories that those licenses fall into.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Tuttle, Commissioner Flanagan, on this specific topic of the cap? Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Tuttle.
Is it possible to ask the executive director or general counsel to weigh in? Because to me, I don't see the contradiction, because it says up to 3 retail licenses, but we're not changing that part.
I'm more than happy to solicit the opinion of the general counsel and the executive director. Mr. Executive Director, do you have an opinion you'd like to share on this topic or not?
No, not at this point. I'm following the conversation, so yeah, nothing I'd like to add at this point. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that. General Counsel Bailey, do you have anything you would like to contribute to this conversation? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have to admit that I'm somewhat in the same position. That being said, I'm happy to work with the commissioners to look at it and to provide an opinion in advance of the next policy meeting.
Yeah,
commission meeting.
Well, we're not. So part of the challenge here is that there is not another policy or a commission meeting prior to our meeting to vote to finalize the regs, which is on the 30th of November. And, you know, and part of that, quite honestly, is due to the fact that we decided to extend public comment on these draft regulations with respect to delivery and have the public meeting that we had last Friday. That being said, and every time we've done a vote, my objective in those meetings is that, you know, we don't have further policy conversations. It really is about, do the draft regulations as written reflect the policy decisions that we made previously. That being said, you know, I think a lot of what we're talking about here today, the 2 topics that Commissioner McBride raised are new, and the turnaround time is unfortunate. You know, we had the public hearing just last Friday, so there hasn't been a lot of time. I am willing, when we get to the meeting on the 30th, to have whatever discussion is necessary on these topics as part of our discussion and vote on the final regs, because these are new topics for most people, but they're important, and we have to get them embedded in our final regs in the vote on the 30th. But we can have some further discussion on the 30th on these 2 topics, which I'm sensing would be valuable to everybody. So I welcome your participation in that process, General Counsel.
I'm happy to provide an opinion at that point, Chairman.
Or prior, but thank you.
If I could just weigh in.
Please go ahead, Commissioner.
Actually, I sent a request for an opinion on Monday to General Counsel and to everyone in General Counsel's office. So it's in your inbox already if you want to take a look at it.
Okay.
My apologies for missing that.
No, I want to acknowledge it's a quick turnaround, so I acknowledge that. But I do think that we can, and I think, in my opinion, absolutely need to have a discussion about this as part of our vote on the 30th. So that being said, unless there are further objections, I would like to actually ask for a motion to approve the policy. Again, we have an opportunity to discuss it further and make make a decision as part of our vote on final regulations. But I think it's important just to give the staff some guidance to have a vote on policy on the first matter that Commissioner McBride has raised. So, Commissioner McBride, are you willing to make a motion, please?
I guess I'm not sure if I'm making a motion to have General Counsel look at the merits of it. If I'm making a motion, my motion would be to decouple the retail license cap from the delivery license cap.
That's the motion I'm asking you to make if you're comfortable.
That's the motion that I'm making then. Move that we decouple the retail license cap from the delivery license cap in the delivery regulations.
Thank you. Could I have a second on that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Teitel. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Teitel?
Abstain.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show that the motion carried by a vote of 3 in favor, Commissioners Flanagan, McBride, and Hoffman, with Commissioner Teitel abstaining. The next topic is even more complicated. Commissioner McBride, I'm open-minded to how you think it's best to go through this. Do we want to just wait until this gets embedded into draft regulatory language and discuss it on the 30th? Would you think it makes sense to have a motion right now? I'm really willing to defer to your judgment on how to proceed here.
It's a pretty complex, list of items. Yes. I think it probably is better to draft it and then reserve time on the 30th to have a discussion about it. I guess what I would ask people to take away from it is that where these ideas are being pulled from are existing anti-monopolization, antitrust statutes. So the ideas that are included in here are not necessarily new ideas. They are just being tweaked to fit into our regulatory regime.
Thank you. I actually agree with your instincts about the best way to handle this, and I do commit to ensure that we do have adequate time on the 30th to get into this matter. I would appreciate it, Commissioner McBride, if you would circulate through the chief of staff whatever write-up you have or can put together on this, so that the other commissioners have time to review this ahead of time before the meeting on the 30th. Are there any other comments on this before we move on to the next matter? Commissioner Teitel?
I have, I think, a friendly amendment to the process,
sure.
Perhaps. So I would actually prefer not to decide it all on the 30th, just because that's supposed to be the day that we vote on the final regulations. So as much as we can discuss now, as long as the day as it's been, I think it would be a good idea. I thought they were very thoughtful and very well put together, and I really like those ideas. And I like that they came from existing antitrust, anti-monopolization principles. I would suggest that there are probably a couple of those that we may all be very comfortable already putting into regulation. But the others, I suggest that we would consider just requiring in the regulations that agreements with tech platforms have to be in line with commission guidance, and then put some of that in guidance. Reason being, this is a very quickly evolving market and quickly evolving principles, or there may not even be established principles when it comes to delivery and tech platforms at this time. So I think we should reserve as much flexibility as possible, especially when we haven't heard public comment on those particular things. So I do very much support them, but I'm feeling uncomfortable, making a final decision on them.
Yeah. My problem with that suggestion, I appreciate it, and I think this is a complicated topic, and so I understand where you're coming from. Is I just think we need to give more specificity. I think if we just say, there's upcoming guidance, I think we slow the entire process down and create uncertainty and ambiguity until those guidance documents are done. I guess if we could put together a short timeline, that might address my anxiety. Go ahead, Commissioner Title.
Thank you. I was actually suggesting that we put that into guidance right now as written, and then we could even vote on it at the same time.
I'm sorry, now I'm not following your suggestion. I apologize. Could you try it one more time?
Either now or on the 30th. I'm suggesting that we require that delivery agreements with tech platforms, which we've already called delivery, we already have a name for them.
Delivery only operators.
Right, but there's a name for the agreements too. The contracts that we just said that we would collect, the contracts between delivery operators and technology. Thank you. So those contracts, we should require in the regulations that they have to comply with commission requirements and guidance. And then those requirements that Commissioner McBride just laid out, we can put them in guidance now. And so that way we're not prolonging the situation. We're not providing uncertainty, but we're giving ourselves flexibility so that we can change that guidance over time if we need to before we reopen the regulations.
Now I understand your proposal. Thank you. Commissioner McBride, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a good idea, but I think that I'm not sure that it's legally permissible if we're going to be putting regulatory requirements or something that would be construed as a regulatory requirement into guidance. I think that there's legal precedent for sort of how administrative agencies need to put regulations in place versus kind of a sub-regulatory, this is how you can comply with this, which falls under the category of guidance. So I get a little bit concerned that while I think it's an idea with merit that enables flexibility, I think the unfortunate part about it is that because we're dealing in regulations have to have certainty to them. And so therefore we need to embed something that we're going to be requiring as part of a regulation in our regulations and not in guidance where it isn't viewed. I think it's viewed as less than a regulatory requirement, less than something that is law.
Mr. Tao?
So granted, I just heard that for the first time, so I don't have it memorized, but what I heard was that we were preventing prohibited inducements, we're prohibiting indirect control, we're prohibiting unlawful monopolization. Those kinds of principles, I think we can put in the regulations, but then we can, I would think, flesh out the specific circumstances and guidance. And that also would allow us to make changes as we're collecting these contracts and reviewing them. I'm sure that we will see things that we didn't anticipate, and so we can keep updating the guidance at that time.
I think there's a balancing act here between your thoughtful proposal, Commissioner Tuttle, and what we can do legally. And I think you're trying to find a good compromise, and I think that's great. I'm going to go back to what I suggest. I think Commissioner McBride suggested earlier. I will leave enough time on the 30th to get into this topic based upon draft regulations consistent with what Commissioner McBride talked about, but obviously suggest and actually really strongly urge you to collaborate with Commissioner McBride on your concerns and and your desire to retain some flexibility. I think between the two of you, I think you can come up with some pretty good ideas. And I do think that we can and will discuss those on the 30th. When we've had previous meetings where the only agenda item was to approve final regulatory language, they've taken very little time because I think our staff does a great job, our legal staff does a great job of translating our policy decisions into regulatory language. And so my expectation is that other than this issue, it's not going to be a particularly lengthy or complex meeting. This is a complex topic, and I actually think that we would be better served by, again, having you, the legal staff, and Commissioner McBride collectively try to come up with something that reflects what I think I heard you say. You agree kind of philosophically with what's trying to be done here, and find a way maybe that creates that balance between the flexibility you're looking for but adheres to regulatory law. I think that's a process I would suggest, and I think is the right way to proceed. Any objections to that? Okay, Commissioner Flanagan, would you care to raise the issue of deferral again?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So I don't believe we need any further votes on this topic. But are there other, before I move on to next meeting dates and adjournment, are there any other topics on delivery that anybody wishes to raise at this point in time? Okay, thank you. If we can move on to the next slide, please. If you're still awake, Matt. Thank you. I guess I don't need to talk about the slide since I just referred to this slide about 10 times in the last 10 minutes, but our next meeting is on November 30th. It is the vote on final regulations. It will have the addendum that we just talked about with respect to the discussion about third-party platform restrictions, but that is on November 30th. There being no further business before the commission, I would ask please for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to adjourn, seconded by Commissioner Teitel. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Teitel?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show Commissioner unanimously voted to adjourn as of 5:13 p.m. on the 19th of November 2020. Thank you to all the staff for your incredibly hard work, not just in terms of pulling this meeting together, but the productivity that the entire agency has shown over the last several years. Thank you for everything, and everybody, please be safe. We are adjourned.